Hello, my name is James Hawkins with Arkansas EFT Community. And so for this month's insight, I'll be sharing about cultural attunement or cultural assessment. I think in this time, and it's always been important, but I think it's becoming even more explicitly important in this time to be able for therapists to have some skills and some words around assessing cultural elements in therapy, and particularly with some other therapists I'm talking about, because it does play into a client and identity, and our identity does impact our sense of attachment and how we go about relationships. That who I am as a person affects how I will show up or how other people see me. And so we want to be able to make space for that for our clients. We want to take the lead in session in helping our clients bring their full humanity into the room, that we don't want to just kind of assume or just leave it out. I had two cases over some time of late, where in one case, the one client came to me, a person of color, because their therapist overly focused on it as a part of their presentation. Not that they just assessed it, but the therapist centered their ethnicity as the thing that they were working with, and that's not what the client wanted or needed. But then in another case, the client came to me because it was an essential element of their presentation, but every time they would try and talk about it, the therapist would just kind of exit the process on them. And so both of those are unfortunate because the therapist lacked some attunement. But I think also it's important that we want to come and help you have words, because it could feel right now in this time it's so loaded to how do I come into this, and if I go into it and I bring it up, am I going to make things worse, or I'm going to say something and I don't mean to be offensive but it's still offensive. So how do I even breach these conversations? What are some good questions? And so I was in a core skills and we were talking about assessment. And so these were some of the questions that I came up with. And what I recognized with these questions was they're not only important for us to try and assess our clients in what ethnicity or their race means for them in counseling and where they might need that to be in the counseling session. I think these questions are also important for us as therapists to ask: how does my ethnicity impact me as a person and how I show up with clients of different ethnic groups? So here are some of those questions. The first one is, how do you identify yourself ethnically? You might look at your client and think but they might have a different description for what that means. So it's always good to ask. And even for you as a therapist, how do you identify ethnically, right? But then the second one is, what has your ethnicity meant for your experience as a person? There's always story to go along with that. For some clients, it has been racial disparities, and that's been black and white. Especially here in the South, I've had some white clients who have experienced racism or some version of racism during times of integration when they were integrated into schools that were predominantly black, right? Or vice versa. I have people here in Northwest Arkansas, people of color who feel invisible, unseen, like they don't get certain opportunities here in Northwest Arkansas. But even for you as a therapist, what has your experience of your own ethnicity or race, what has it meant for you? And you might say, I have no idea. It's just been what it is, because, pretty much everywhere I've learned and experienced, whether it's in community, whatever, most of the people have been of my own ethnicity. Well, what does that mean for you then to join in with another ethnic group, right? And how has your ethnicity impacted your experience of the world? So, the first one was, your experience as a person, but what about the world and how you take in relationship, or how you even see the world and how you make sense of the world, how you make sense of the experiences that are going on. I remember having one of my friends talk about, he was going to see a therapist, and he brought up about race with a therapist that was white, and he was a person of color. And his therapist was like, well, we all. And what it is like the therapist, in their experience, like everything was fine, but the therapist was not attuned to where this client, the person of color, was coming from in their own experience. And then the last question is, how do you believe, and I think this one is really important for us as therapists to ask, how do you believe ethnicity will play a role in your counseling goals and in our counseling relationship? So for the client, that's their time to really are you concerned about this? Are you concerned that maybe I won't be able to attune to a part of your story? What does this feel like to be in this room with me, right? But then also for you as a therapist, how do you think how do you believe the ethnic that the ethnic differences there might impact your ability to attune with the client in certain parts of their story. So these are real simple questions, but I do think it's important, one, to equip you with some language and some verbiage around this. Thank you so much from the Arkansas EFT Center.